So in the cutting list for the piece, I advise you to cut the drawer pieces after you've constructed the unit. And the reason for that is any slight misplacement of any of these pieces will affect the size of the drawer opening, and therefore you'll be cutting your drawer and they're not going to fit. So always construct the piece first, and then you can just measure each of the drawer openings, and you want the width and the height measurement. So for example, this bottom drawer measures 34.5mm wide, so I would then deduct 0.5 millimetre, so 0.5mm from that measurement, just so that the drawer has room to move. And then again from the height measurement, which is 19.5, I would deduct 0.5 millimetre, again so that we've got a tiny gap at the top and bottom and room for the drawer to move in and out. Keep the depth the same, which is 25 millimetres, and we're not going to do it so the drawer goes all the way back to the back of the unit, but we can put some drawer stops in to stop the drawer from sort of pushing in when you close it. So just to recap, you measure the width of the drawer opening and you deduct 0.5 millimetre from the width, and you measure the height of the opening and again deduct 0.5 millimetres from the height. That width and height measurement will be your front and back pieces, and then for the side pieces you stick to the 25 millimetres deep, but again there will be that height measurement, so whatever the height is minus 0.5 millimetre. Okay, so once you've then cut the pieces for the drawer, just gently sand each piece, going along the sandpaper in just one direction, and then you begin by gluing the side pieces to the outer edge of the base piece. So just apply glue to each side of the base piece, and then just attach the side pieces. Try to keep them as upright as you can. Just press that into place, and then the other piece. And then you can just put that to one side to dry off. And when it is actually dry enough for you to handle without it falling apart, you can then apply glue to the front and back, and we'll attach our front and back pieces. And when you attach them, just make sure that the sides are sort of flush with the edge of that piece, the back piece, and again at the front, so you get a nice square drawer. And you can just press those together. And again, that can just be put to one side to dry. And then when the glue has fully dried, you can sand the drawer on all edges, but not too harshly, because we don't want it to take away from the measurements, as there'll be a bigger gap around the drawer. So just very lightly, top and bottom, and then on the sides, again just going in one direction, or you'll find that the drawer sort of flares outwards if you rock it back and forth. That should be enough. And then just, this is the bottom drawer, just try the drawer in the opening. And don't push it too far in case it gets stuck, but that's okay. I'm just going to take a little bit more off because that's just a little bit tight. Just off of the top and bottom. And just try that again. Yeah, and that's a better fit this time. So always just making tiny adjustments by sanding. Never go too vigorously, as you'll find you've got gaps all the way around, which doesn't look very nice. And then we're going to attach the drawer knob, and I'm using a 3mm wooden drawer knob. And I don't know if you can see it there, but it's got a sort of tail at the end there, which we'll insert through the wood at the front of the drawer. So begin by making a measurement in the centre of the drawer front. So just make a tiny faint mark there, and then turn the drawer around to get the measurement centrally across the height of the drawer. That's there, so just make a pencil mark there. And then I'm using this pin drill to make the hole, and that's a 1mm drill bit in there, but we can make the hole slightly bigger. So hold it quite firmly, but don't press down too hard or the drawer front might crush. Once you've gone through, just twist it round like that, just to make the hole slightly bigger. And then you can try the stem of the drawer knob just to make sure it fits, which it does. So use your cocktail stick and just apply a tiny blob of glue over the hole. And then just push the drawer knob in. You can just use another cocktail stick to remove the excess glue from around the edge. And again, that can be left to dry until it's time for painting. To prevent the drawers from sort of going too far back when you put them in, sort of like that, we're going to attach what I call a drawer stop, and I've put one here in the top. It's basically just a piece of wood that will stop the drawer from going too far back. So if I put the top drawing like that, I can push it in and it won't go any further back because the stop is in place. So to measure for these, you need to push the drawer in and push it all the way back, and then you can just take your ruler and measure from the front of the drawer to the edge of the drawer shelf, and then just cut a scrap of wood to that measurement. It doesn't matter how wide it is, but as long as the depth is correct. And then just use a tweeze to get it out. The top one obviously was easy to put in because it's an exposed area, but if you're doing it in the sort of middle or bottom drawer openings, best to use tweezers. And just apply glue like that, and then just insert it into the very back of the drawer. Inserted that there, and then just press it down. Just remove any excess glue from along the front so that the drawer doesn't stick to it. And then the drawer can go in and it won't go back further than it should. So now this piece is ready to paint. This area will be covered with a curtain, so it's up to you whether you paint inside. No need to paint inside the sink area, and I personally don't paint inside the drawer areas either, because that can affect the size of the opening, and again the drawers won't fit when we come to put them back in. And I'm just going to use normal household emulsion in a nice dark cream colour. So once the sink unit has been painted, you can sand using the fine grade sandpaper. And we're now going to make the actual sink. We're going to start with the base piece, and we're going to begin by making a plug hole. So measure centrally across the longest edge, and just make a pencil mark in the centre. And then turn the piece and just make the mark 8mm from that edge. Put the pencil mark there. And then I'm using this pin drill, and I've got a 1mm bit in there. I'm just going to drill into the wood. Once the wood starts spinning, you're through, and then just push that through and just go round like that, just to make the hole slightly bigger. And that's the plug hole. And then on the back piece, the front and back pieces are obviously the same, so just choose one piece, and again measure centrally across the width. Just make a faint pencil mark there, and then turn the piece and make a pencil mark about 5mm from that top edge. And that's where we're going to put the first drill hole, and this is to make the overflow, and we're just basically going to make 3 holes in there. So drill through, and then you don't need to measure, you can just do this by eye. Just come slightly to the right of that hole and make another hole, and then again just go slightly over to the left. You're just going a couple of millimetres away, but again you don't have to measure it, you can just do that by eye. And there we've just made a little 3-hole overflow there. And now to actually construct the sink, I'm going to start by attaching the side pieces. So apply glue to either side of the base piece. And then attach the side pieces. Keep them upright. That piece. And just press those into place. I'm just going to use another cocktail stick to remove that glue from along the joins. Oops. And then just put that to one side to dry. And I have one here that I did earlier, so that's nice and dry now, so I can handle it without fear of it falling apart. And we're now going to attach the front and back. So apply glue along these edges. And then you just want to make sure, if you put it that way round so that the plug hole is at the top there, make sure that the piece you've put the overflow in is at the back, and that the overflow is also towards the top. Just press that into place, making sure that these side pieces are flush with the side of the back piece. And then just put the front piece on as well, again making sure that those sides are flush. Press that together. Just removing the excess glue. and then that can be put to one side to dry. And then when the glue has completely dried, you can sand the sink to make it into a nice flush piece. So on the top and bottom in circular motions, and then on the sides just go along again in one direction. And then we'll just kind of shape the edges. We're just going to round those off. So using your finer grained sandpaper, just hold the piece in your hand and just sweep over that corner just to round it off, get rid of the sharpness of those edges. You can see there it's just beginning to sort of round off, create a nice shape. And do the other edge as well. Just a bit more on that side. So the sink is now done, and you can paint that, and I'm actually going to use an antique white. I've just got one of these little sample pots here, and this is just a normal household emulsion, an antique white rather than bright white, which looks more like enamel, which the sink would be made from. So here is the sink. It's been painted. That had 2 coats of an antique white paint, and you only have to paint the inside of the sink and the front. I've left the underneath and the edges unpainted because obviously they're not going to be seen. I sanded after each coat using the fine grained sandpaper, and then I finished with a coat of clear gloss. And as you're painting, the plug hole and the overflow can become blocked, so just use a cocktail stick to remove the paint out of those holes as you're going along. And then we want to attach the sink to the unit, so apply glue to the sink opening. Just got some here on a piece of card. Base there, and then just to the sides, and the sink doesn't go all the way back, so you don't need to go all the way back with the glue. And then just slot the sink into place so that it's just very, very slightly hanging over at the front there, but only by sort of 0.5 millimetre or so. Press it down. Just going to use another cocktail stick to just remove that excess glue from around the joins. And then you can just use some clamps just to hold that into place at the sides, just whilst the glue begins to set. And then that can just be left to one side to dry. So once the sink is in place and the glue has dried, we want to cut the hole for the sink in the worktop. The worktop will fit on like so, and then we'll have a hole cut here. And to do that, place the worktop so that the sides are flush with the sides of the unit, and then just very slightly move it backwards. You can put your fingers at either side just to check that it's still in the correct place, so still in line with these side pieces. And then you want to draw a pencil line in the centre where the side of the sink is, and that's where the hole will be. So just draw a line there, and on the other side as well, and that's in the centre of this side part, so that the worktop, or the draining board, will just cover just part of that side of the sink. And then put the top back where it should go, and then you just want to move it this way slightly, and again put your fingers there so you can tell that it's still in line, and then you want to draw another line in the middle of this back of the sink, like that. So we've got a pencil line where the middle of the back of the sink is, and we've got pencil lines in the middle of the side pieces of the sink. And then just put the sink to one side. Take your ruler and just measure where that back line is from the back of the sink. So measure from there to there, and that's about 12.5 millimeters. It may be slightly different on yours due to the position of the sink or the size of the sink, so do make sure that you measure, and then just copy that measurement to the other end of the draining board. So that was 12.5, and then just draw a very faint pencil line across, and try not to let the pencil dig into the wood, as it will mark it, and when you varnish it that will really show up. So just a really faint line across there, and then we want to measure these lines, and we're going to copy them onto this line that we've done. So from the side, the first line is 41.5 millimeters. I'm just going to copy that onto that back line I've just done, again very faintly. And then this second mark, 80.5 millimeters from this side, and I want to copy that over as well. So we're basically measuring out where our sink opening should be, and then we're copying those marks, and we're going to cut out this square. Again, a very, very faint pencil line across there and across there, and this is the area we're going to remove. So take the craft knife, and what I'm going to do first of all is just cut into those back corners. So where the lines meet, just cut into the corner, and that one as well. I'm not going completely through the wood yet, I'm just making a good score into the wood, going against the grain first, and then come this way with the grain. Okay, you're just cutting into the corner, and this is really just so that our knife doesn't go past either of those lines when we're cutting this square out. Turn it that way. And that went all the way through there. And then just take your ruler and then just cut as you normally would, starting in that line you've just made. and this is 2.5mm thick wood, so it is a little harder to cut through, and especially against the grain. So just keep going, and don't be tempted to try and push the piece free, because the wood will just split, and we want a nice clean edge. So just keep going through. It's quite hard work. Now I think I'm through there. Yeah, so I'm all the way through there. And then do the other side, and I'm going against the grain first, which will prevent the wood from splitting. Be really careful of your fingers as well. I think I'm through there now. And then finally you can do the back cut, and this is with the grains, will be slightly easier, but just be careful you don't come over this end, so really sort of control the knife until you get into that slit that you've already made. And there, through like that. And then we just want to remove these pencil marks. Find my rubber. And then just going to use a nail file rather than sandpaper, just to sand these edges. So just go along in the one direction, or across rather. When you're doing that piece, hold it against your worktop, because that is obviously quite flimsy there. It might break off. And then you can just also curl those edges in, so just creating a very, very light chamfer on each edge. And you can just check the fit. As you can see, the sort of edges are just overlapping each edge of the sink there. And then the backsplash here, which we will attach at the back there after we've varnished. Just want to round off these corners. So with your medium grained sandpaper, just place that on your worktop, and then you just want to round off each edge. So just sweep it across the sandpaper, just bringing it into an upright position as you come towards you, just like so. And then you could just slightly tilt it just to chamfer off each edge. So you've got a nice rounded edge, and then do the other end, making sure you're doing the same side. So you've got Nice rounded edge, like that. And then the reason I don't attach that until after I've varnished is because that line of glue along there the varnish won't take over it and it won't look very nice. So to make it easier to varnish, I'm just going to use masking tape. Turn this over so that you're applying the masking tape to the bottom or the underside of the piece. And just stick a piece across the opening like that. Just trim that off. And then just another little tiny piece just to hold that into place. And then you can just add another piece which will sort of act like a handle. So just press it through there and curl it round. And then when you're varnishing, you've just got a piece to hold it with, and you just want to do this whole surface and just the outer edges of the underside, and obviously these bits in here, which will all be visible when the piece is in place. And then for this piece, you just want to get a piece of card, a piece of scrap card, and again just attach a piece of tape to the card, sticky side up, and then you can just stick that on there, and that's then held in position for when you varnish it, so that you don't have to hold it and get varnish all over your fingers. Once the worktop is varnished, we're going to attach it to the actual sink unit. This has had one coat of varnish. You can apply a second coat if you want a deeper colour, but I'm going to be adding clear wax at the end, which deepens it up a little bit. So remove the top drawer of the unit, as we don't want it getting glued in place, and then apply glue using a cocktail stick just to the edges of the unit. And go along that central divide as well. And you can just go along the very back of the sink and the edges of the sink as well. And then put your draining board in place so that the back of it is flush with the back of the unit, and there'll just be a very, very slight overhang at the front. And just press that down into place. And then you can hold it into place while you just go round underneath and remove any excess glue with another cocktail stick. Remove the glue as well from along the edge of the sink. And then use masking tape to hold that into place. So just put a piece across the back. Let's put another piece across the front there. And then if it's lifting slightly there in the middle, you can just put a piece straight over the middle as well. and then that can just be put to one side to dry. So once the glue has dried, you can remove the masking tape and just check that the drawer fits back in nicely. You might find that it's a little bit tight, might need some sanding. That one's actually okay. And then sand the bottom edge of the backsplash just to remove any sort of varnish. Apply glue to the bottom edge, and then that can be attached to the draining board so that the back of it is flush with the back of the draining board, so it's flat along the back edge there. And just press that into place. And then just very carefully go along there to remove the glue. That just finishes that off nicely. And then finally we're going to attach the tap, and I'm using this brass mixer tap, and these are available from most Doll's House accessory suppliers. I'll soon have some for sale on my Etsy store, so if you would like one of these, just let me know and I can order some extra ones in. Now when you get them, you normally find they've just got a bit of a ridge on the bottom, so if they have, you can actually just use your normal medium grade sandpaper and just sand that bottom edge off. Just to make sure that that's flat, and you can actually just check that it does actually stand up. If it stands up on its own, then you know that those bottom pieces are flat. So to attach the mixer tap to the unit, we're attaching metal to wood, so we need to use super glue. And just apply the tiniest dot, just make sure that that's coming out, to the bottom of each sort of leg. And then you can just place this by eye so that it's exactly in the centre of the sink, and so that the faucet is obviously hanging over into the sink. And just as a guide, these legs will be either side of those overflow holes that we made. And then before you press it down, just check that you're happy with the positioning, because super glue dries very quickly. You've probably got a few seconds just to change position if you're not happy with it. And then just press that down. And again, if there's any sort of glue around the edges, you can just remove that with the cocktail stick. We're now going to complete the sink by making our curtain. So cut a piece of fabric measuring 65mm across by 55mm high, and that's 2 5/8 of an inch wide by 2 1/4 inches high. And if you're using a striped fabric, cut it so the stripes run in the direction of the shortest edge. So we're just going to glue a hem into the fabric, and I'm just using this fabric glue, and I've dispensed some here onto a piece of card. And just fold up a hem at the bottom of the fabric, just about 3mm or 1/8 of an inch, and just crease that in. and then just apply a line of glue using a cocktail stick here. Like that, and then just fold that up. Just making a nice hem at the bottom there, and that can then be put to one side to dry. I've got one here that I did earlier which is now dried, and we're now going to do a hem at either edge of the fabric. So again, fold over a 3mm hem, just crease that in, and the same on the other side. Doesn't have to be exactly 3mm, but around about that. And then before we glue, I'm just going to snip off each of these corners, and it just gives a neater finish. So just snip off the 3mm corner, and the other side as well. This is at the hemmed edge of the fabric, and then glue those edges over. And again, that piece can then be left to one side for the glue to dry. And have a piece here again that I made earlier, just snip that off. Now bring in your sink and just measure it so that the bottom is touching the bottom of the opening, and then just make a mark with your finger where that needs to be folded. So we're going to make a final hem to enclose the rail, so just make a mark there and then just fold that over, and again crease that in with your finger. And when you've done that, you can just measure again that that is the right length, and if not you can just adjust that slightly. And then I want to use a cocktail stick to make the curtain rail. So measure the opening beneath the sink, and then just snip off the pointed end of a cocktail stick and cut to size. And we want this to be quite tight in there, so just make sure that it's nice and tight when you fit it in. And that's going to become our curtain rail. And then again, just snip the corners off of the curtain, that hemmed edge there, down to the crease that we've just made, and then just apply a line of glue to the very top of the fabric, like that, and then just put the cocktail stick in there and glue the fabric down over it. And we don't want to glue the cocktail stick down, so just make sure that the glue is just along that very edge of the fabric. And then when the glue is dried, we'll be able to pleat the curtain. So just press those edges down. Just make sure that the cocktail stick can still move around in there. And again, that piece can just be left to dry. Once the glue is dried, we just want to gather the fabric along the cocktail stick until the ends of the cocktail stick come out at either end of the curtain. And if the stick, like it is here, gets caught just inside the hem, you can just use another cocktail stick and just tuck the hem back. I don't know if you can see that there, but just tuck it back behind the cocktail stick inside, and then just work the fabric along until the cocktail stick pokes out. And that end as well, it's just getting a little bit stuck by the glue, but that's okay as long as you can see each end of the cocktail stick. And then hold on to the ends like that, and then just gather the fabric so it's even across the rail. And you can fold a few of those pleats in just with your fingers. Like that. And then just apply a tiny dot of your normal wood glue to each end of the cocktail stick, and then you can just attach that into place. So put one end in first, then push the other end in, and push the rail up as well as far as it will go, like so, and then just neaten the curtain, and you can move it along the rail again if you need to. There's the curtain. And then this step is obviously optional, but I always just finish off the varnish top with a coat of clear wax, and this is just a clear shoe polish, and just apply a bit to a piece of kitchen towel, and then just work it into the top, and it just gives the varnish a nice rich finish. Work along the edges, around the taps. And there's your completed sink unit.